Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over the 2010 MacBook. It's a unibody, white color. At the time of release, this one was for sale for $999 back in 2010. Today I'm going to go through it, upgrade it, and show you guys why this is still a pretty usable MacBook 11 years later. Before we get started, please take a second, hit that subscribe button, and like this video. It really means a lot to me and helps the channel grow. So let's start off by going over what exactly is in this MacBook. Like I said in the intro, this is a 2010 Unibody MacBook. It's not a MacBook Pro. And what's inside this is a 2.4 gigahertz Intel Core 2 Duo. Luckily, the previous owner already upgraded the RAM, so I don't got to worry about that. It's got 8 gigabytes of DDR3. Still got a pretty decent battery with only 339 battery cycles. And however, storage is pretty rough. That's still having a Toshiba 250 gigabyte slow hard drive. So let's turn this computer off, take it apart, and upgrade the hard drive to an SSD, which will dramatically increase our performance. To get the back cover off, we first need to start by taking off the 8 Phillips screws. Luckily, the previous owner got us a head start and only left 2 screws. We'll have to fix that later on in the video. Now that we have the computer's back open, we can kind of see how the back cover works. As you can see, there are these 3 little kind of tab things that are in the center that correspond to 3 little tabs, I guess is the best way I can come up with how to explain it. But those 3 tabs that are on the back of the cover, they slot in, and that kind of holds the center of the back cover in place. In later versions of the MacBook, they replaced that setup with 2 screws on the side instead of having that those tabs in place. The SSD that I'm going to install is an Inland Professional 120 gigabyte SSD. I buy them for like $20 on Amazon. I'll make sure to throw a link in the description below if you want to try this out. I've never had any issues with them, and I've probably used over 150 of them. Then we're going to spray a little compressed air and then remove the hard drive, which is super simple. 2 Phillips screws along the top of the hard drive that kind of holds it in place. Pull that up, and this hard drive pops right out. All we need to do is transfer the 2 screws that are on the hard drive over to our new 120 gigabyte SSD. First, I'm going to go through and do a little bit of cleaning so that this MacBook looks all shiny for the next owner. Now we can take the SSD out of its box using my trusty Kershaw blade. I've had this knife for like 2-3 years, and it's the best knife I've ever owned. Now that we got it out of the box, we can take the 2 hard drive screws and screw them in, and then get the hard drive or the SSD placed in its correct spot. Now we can go ahead and place the back cover back on and screw the screws back into place. Luckily, I have a bunch of MacBook screws laying around that I can borrow from and put all 8 of them in the back of this. Now that we have the upgraded SSD installed, we need to go ahead and reinstall Mac OS. This particular MacBook is capable of going up to Mac OS High Sierra, but it needs a firmware update in order to do that. So I'm going to start off by installing Mac OS LKP10 from a bootable USB drive. Then after that's done, we'll go ahead and upgrade it to Mac OS High Sierra. Now that we have LKP10 installed on the new SSD, we can go ahead and download Google Chrome and then upgrade to High Sierra, which is the max supported. All you need to do is just Google Mac OS High Sierra. There'll be a link of all the old versions of Mac OS. You just scroll down and you select Mac OS High Sierra. It'll take you to the App Store, and all you have to do is sign in and download High Sierra from there. Then after waiting 30 or so minutes, Mac OS High Sierra will update, your computer will restart, and then it will boot right into High Sierra. So now I'm going to run it through a couple of benchmarks. I'm going to start off by running it through the CPU benchmark through Geekbench 5. Now that it's done with the Geekbench 5, we see that it earned a single core score of 342 and a multi-core score of 625. Not very good by today's standards, but still usable. And people that buy this laptop are not going to be using it for super intensive, CPU intensive projects. It's just not who's going to be using this. Then I tried to run a compute score, and every time I tried to launch it, it just went 1 second and then canceled out. So I think that speaks for itself. Obviously, the graphics on an 11-year-old computer are not going to hold up in 2021. But again, people aren't going to be playing the latest games, doing heavy 4K video editing. This is just not the customer that buys an 11-year-old computer. And now I'm going to launch and run the Unigine Heaven benchmark, and I bet we can all guess whether or not this does a great job or an extremely terrible job. And would you look at that? It scored an average frame per second 7.2 with a score of 182. The max frames per second that it got during this test was 13.6, and the minimum it got was 5.2. So don't plan on using this 11-year-old MacBook to do some heavy gaming. Now, I've told you all of the people who shouldn't buy this and all of the customers who aren't looking for this, but let's take a second and go over who actually would be a good customer for the MacBook. As you can see, it still supports the latest version of Chrome. It's got High Sierra, which I consider to be still very usable. It's probably the last version. LKP10 is borderline, but Mac High Sierra supports pretty much everything. It will run a YouTube video perfectly fine without stuttering and skipping. This would be a great laptop for a broke college student, for parents to get their kids who are currently learning from home. It can still run Microsoft Office perfectly fine. It's got a decent display. We upgraded it to an SSD. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM, and the 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 Duo is plenty enough for basic tasks. So to sum up the 2010 MacBook, it is still a great laptop, and anyone who's on a budget that can't afford the latest and greatest M1 MacBook Air or MacBook Pro should definitely take a look at getting themselves a MacBook 2010. It can still do YouTube, it can do Office, and it can do many basic tasks that a broke college student or any kid currently in school would need it to do. Thanks a lot for stopping by and watching the video. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next video.